The spotlight sliced through the haze of the grand hall like a scalpel, carving out the silhouette of the pianist on stage, a man whose fingers danced over the keys with the fury of a storm-tossed sea. Alexander Hartley's champagne flute slipped from his numb fingers, shattering against the polished marble floor in a spray of crystal shards and golden fizz. But no one noticed. The music swallowed everything. And in that suspended breath between chords, as the melody crested into a heartbreaking minor key, Alexander's world fractured open. Those hands, those eyes, Ethan. Alive. Not the ghost he'd buried a decade ago in the rain-soaked earth of a Pennsylvania graveyard. He couldn't breathe. The applause erupted around him like distant thunder. But Alexander remained frozen in his box seat, high above the throng of New York's elite. His tailored tuxedo suddenly too tight, too confining. His Ethan had risen from the piano, bowing with a grace that masked the hollows in his cheeks, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of nights too long and dreams too cruel. The accident? The mangled car on that icy interstate? The body they'd never recovered from the river's depths. Alexander had mourned him for years, carving his grief into the steel of his empire, building Hartley's holdings into a billion-dollar fortress against the void. But there he was, flesh and blood, pouring his soul into Chopin under the chandeliers of the Metropolitan Opera House. Alexander's legs moved before his mind could catch up, propelling him down the crimson-carpeted aisles, past whispering socialites in designer gowns, through the crush of admirers swarming the stage door. His heart hammered a rhythm older than the nocturnes still echoing in his ears, the same frantic pulse from stolen summers in the Hamptons, when they were just two boys stealing kisses under the boardwalk, dreaming of a world that wouldn't burn them for loving each other. Security loomed at the exit, burly arms crossed, but Alexander flashed his donor's badge, the one that bought him access to every locked door in this city. "I need to see him," he rasped, voice raw as gravel. "Tell him. Tell Ethan that Alex is here." Alex from Penn. The guard's eyes narrowed, but the name worked its magic. Whispers rippled back like a current. Minutes stretched into eternities until the door creaked open. And there he was, Ethan Caldwell, unchanged yet utterly transformed, his once boyish frame leaner, hardened by time, dressed in a simple black shirt rolled to the elbows, exposing forearms corded with veins from endless hours at the keys. Up close, the lines around his eyes were deeper, etched by secrets Alexander could only guess at. But that crooked smile, that smile, flickered like a match in the wind. "Alex." Ethan's voice was a ghost's whisper, laced with disbelief and something sharper, like fear. He stepped forward, the backstage clamor fading to a hum. And for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just them, two men on the precipice of unraveling. They collided in the dim corridor, arms wrapping around each other with a desperation that bordered on violence. Alexander buried his face in the crook of Ethan's neck, inhaling the familiar scent of sandalwood and sweat-mingled sheet music, mingled now with the faint metallic tang of city grit. "You're dead," he murmured against Ethan's skin, the words muffled but fierce. "I buried you. I fucking buried you." Tears burned hot tracks down his cheeks, soaking into the fabric of Ethan's shirt, and he felt the other man's body shudder, a sob trapped in his throat like a chord unresolved. Ethan pulled back first, hands framing Alexander's face, thumbs brushing away the salt-streaked evidence of his breakdown. His green eyes, those eyes that had once sparkled like the Atlantic under July sun, were stormy now, guarded by walls Alexander didn't remember building. I never died, Alex. But part of me did. That night on the bridge. His voice cracked, and he glanced away, toward the distant roar of the crowd still buzzing from the performance. We can't do this here. Not like this. Alexander nodded, as Ethan led him through a labyrinth of dressing rooms and service stairs, emerging into the cool November bite of Lincoln Center's back alley. The city pulsed around them, taxis honking, steam rising from grates like exhales from the concrete beast, but it felt distant, unreal. They slipped into a waiting black sedan, Alexander's driver materializing like a shadow, and sped toward the West Village, where Ethan kept a cramped walk-up above a jazz bar that reeked of spilled whiskey and broken promises. The apartment was a time capsule of survival, sheet music pinned to peeling wallpaper, a baby grand squeezed into the corner like an afterthought, takeout containers stacked like Jenga towers on the fire escape. Ethan flicked on a lamp, its amber glow casting long shadows that danced like accusations. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon into mismatched glasses, Alexander's from a crystal decanter in his penthouse, Ethan's from a corner bodega, and they sank onto the sagging couch, knees brushing in the tight space. Tell me, Alexander demanded, his voice steadier now, though his hands trembled around the glass. The crash. They said the river took you. Your parents. They identified dental records or some bullshit. I sat in that chapel. Ethan. I held your mother while she wailed. Ethan's laugh was bitter, a shard of glass in the quiet room. He set his drink down, fingers flexing as if still caressing ivory keys. Dental records. Yeah. That was me, or close enough. My cousin Jamie, the one who looked just like me. We were close. You know? Same build. Same smile. He was driving that night. Not me. Fleeing his own mess, some bad debt, a dealer he owed. I lent him the car. Begged him to be careful on that ice. When it happened, he trailed off, staring at the floorboards scarred by years of restless pacing. The cops called my folks. They assumed it was me. I let them. It was easier. Easier? Alexander's voice rose, a whip crack in the air. He surged to his feet, bourbon sloshing over the rim. You vanished. Left me to grieve a lie. I thought I'd failed you, pushed you away with my family's poison. Their endless lectures about fixing me, sending me to those goddamn conversion camps before I even knew what love was. Memories flooded him, summers at Penn, stolen weekends in smoke-filled dorms, Ethan's laughter echoing off brick walls as they mapped constellations on each other's skin. Then the fights, Alexander's father. The steel magnate, discovering letters tucked in a suitcase. His rage a thunderclap that echoed through the estate. Marry a girl. Or you're no son of mine. Ethan had been the escape, the rebellion, until the world conspired to rip them apart. Ethan stood too, closing the distance, his hand ghosting over Alexander's arm, a touch electric. Tentative. I was scared, Alex. Terrified. My family was falling apart, Dad's firm bankrupt. Mom popping pills like candy. Jamie's death was the final straw. They needed insurance money. Closure. And me? I was nobody. A music major with a trust fund that dried up overnight. If I came back, corrected the record, what then? You'd have dragged me into your world. your boardrooms and galas, and I'd have suffocated. I loved you too much for that. The words hung between them, heavy as the humid air before a storm. Alexander searched Ethan's face, tracing the new scar above his brow, a thin white line from some untold brawl or fall, and felt the old ache bloom fresh. You think I built all this for myself? Hartley's holdings, the acquisitions? The mergers, every dollar was a brick in the wall I built around your memory. I dated men who looked like you, fucked them in hotel suites overlooking the Hudson, pretending they could fill the hole. But none of them played like you do. None of them made the world quiet. Ethan's breath hitched, and he leaned in, forehead pressing to Alexander's, the space between them crackling with unspoken years. Their lips met then, soft at first, question, then hungry, a demand. Alexander tasted bourbon and regret, hands fisting in Ethan's shirt as he backed him against the piano, the instrument thrumming under the assault like a living thing. Keys clattered in discordant protest as they tumbled onto the bench, bodies aligning in a frenzy of rediscovery, shirts tugged free, skin bared to the lamplight, gasps mingling with the distant wail of sirens. It was messy, urgent, nails scraping down backs, teeth nipping at collarbones, Alexander whispering Ethan's name like a prayer against the hollow of his throat. Ethan arched beneath him, fingers threading through Alexander's hair, pulling him closer, deeper, as if to erase the decades' divide. They moved together in a rhythm older than words, sweat-slick and fervent, the piano's lid serving as an altar for their resurrection. When release came, it shattered them both, Alexander crying out, Ethan silent, tears carving paths through the dust on his cheeks. Afterward, they lay tangled on the rug, chest heaving, the room spinning slow. Alexander traced lazy patterns on Ethan's chest, over the faint scars from a life unshared, a burn from a diner grill, a knife's edge from a bar fight in Chicago. Stay, he murmured, voice thick with exhaustion. Let me fix this. We can start over the proper. No more ghosts. Ethan's eyes darkened, a shadow crossing his features. He pressed a kiss to Alexander's temple, tender but laced with sorrow. It's not that simple, Alex. I've got debts. Debts to people who don't ask nicely. And you. You're a world I ran from for a reason. Alexander pulled him closer, ignoring the warning bells. For the first time in years, the void felt filled. But as dawn crept through the grimy blinds, painting their skin in gold, he didn't see the storm gathering on the horizon, the one that would test if love could outrun betrayal. The weeks blurred into a fever dream of reconciliation. Alexander whisked Ethan away from the village hovel, installing him in the guest suite of his Tribeca loft, a sprawling expanse of glass walls and minimalist art, overlooking the glittering sprawl of Manhattan. Mornings began with coffee brewed strong and black. Alexander in silk pajamas scrolling through market reports while Ethan tinkered at the Steinway Alexander had delivered overnight. Its ebony gleam a silent apology for lost time. Afternoons were stolen, walks along the High Line, hands brushing in coded affection, or lazy brunches at Balthazar where Ethan sketched melodies on napkins, his laughter freer with each passing day. But cracks spiderwebbed beneath the surface. Ethan's phone buzzed incessantly, calls he silenced with a grimace, texts he deleted mid-read. Old gigs, he'd say, waving it off. But Alexander saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted to the door during quiet dinners. One night, after a performance at Carnegie where Ethan's rendition of Gershwin had the critics weeping, they returned to find the loft ransacked, drawers yanked open, safe untouched but papers strewn like confetti. "Just kids," Ethan muttered, but his voice was tight, and Alexander caught the flash of a business card fluttering to the floor. "Vito's Loans, Brooklyn." "You're in trouble," Alexander said that night, as they lay in the king-sized bed, city lights painting constellations on the ceiling. It wasn't a question. Ethan sighed, rolling to face him, his profile sharp against the glow. "It's nothing I can't handle. A few bad investments after I left. Music doesn't pay like it used to. Not when you're playing dives to stay off the grid. Let me help." Alexander's hand found Ethan's, intertwining fingers over the duvet. "I have lawyers. Connections. We pay it off. And it's done." Ethan's grip tightened, then released. "I don't want your money, Alex. I want us to be equals. Not some kept man in your tower." The word stung, echoing Alexander's father's old barbs, but he swallowed them, pulling Ethan into a kiss that promised more than words could. They made love slowly then, savoring the fragility, Alexander mapping every inch of Ethan as if committing him to memory anew. But doubt lingered, a quiet intruder in their idyll. It escalated on a crisp December evening, snow dusting the streets like powdered sugar. Alexander had planned a surprise, tickets to a private recital at the Frick, followed by dinner at Le Bernardin. Ethan arrived late, disheveled, a fresh bruise blooming purple on his jaw. "Slipped on ice," he lied, but Alexander's eyes narrowed, seeing the truth in the way Ethan avoided his gaze. They fought in the limo, words flying like daggers. "Who is he? Ethan? This Vito, who the fuck is he to you?" "A mistake," Ethan snapped, rubbing his knuckles raw from some unseen punch. "From when I was scraping by in Detroit, playing for tips and dodging bullets. He loaned me cash for the car. The apartment, thought I could flip it on gigs. But the pandemic hit. Venues closed. Now he wants double. With interest." Alexander's blood ran cold. "And you didn't tell me because?" "Because you're Alexander Hartley, the man who closes deals with billionaires over scotch." "What am I?" "A pianist who faked his death to run from his own cowardice." Ethan's voice broke, and he turned to the window, fogging the glass with his breath. "I love you, Alex. Good. I never stopped. But I can't drag you into my mess." The recital passed in a blur of strings and silence between them. Afterward, over foie gras and whispers of reconciliation, Alexander made his vow, "We're in this together. I'll handle Vito." Discreetly, Ethan's smile was tentative, but his eyes shone. That night, back in the loft, they celebrated with champagne and candlelight, bodies entwining in a dance of forgiveness. Alexander felt the walls between them crumble, brick by brick, as Ethan's moans filled the room, raw and reverent. For a moment, the world was theirs, two men reclaiming stolen time under the relentless New York sky. But betrayal has a way of slithering in unannounced. 2 days later, Alexander's assistant buzzed his office line during a board meeting. "Sir, you have a visitor." "Says it's urgent." Vito Moretti, the man who strode into Alexander's corner office, was a caricature of menace, squat and barrel-chested, gold chains glinting against a silk shirt unbuttoned to reveal a chest tattooed with faded roses and thorns. His smile was a shark's. All teeth and no warmth. Mr. Hartley. Heard you've been sniffing around my business with your boy toy. Alexander leaned back in his leather chair, the city a glittering backdrop to his calm. Ethan Caldwell is no one's boy toy. And if you have a claim, state it plainly. Vito chuckled, lighting a cigar despite the no-smoking sign. Acrid smoke curling like a threat. Plain? Sure. He owes me 50 grand. Plus vig. Thinks he can hide behind your billions? Cute. But I got photos, him and me, sealing the deal in a motel off I-95. Real intimate stuff. Unless you wire the cash by Friday, those pics hit every tabloid from here to LA. Billionaire's lover, debt-ridden dead man walking. Your shareholders would love that. Rage boiled in Alexander's veins. But he masked it with ice. Blackmail. Closet. Get out. Vito flicked ash onto the Persian rug. Friday. Hartley. Or Ethan learns what happens when pretty boys bite the hand. The door clicked shut, and Alexander slammed his fist into the desk, knuckles splitting on polished walnut. He called his fixer, Marcus, the ex-cop who handled the firm's dirtier laundry, but as he paced, doubt nod, had Ethan played him? Used their reunion as a shield? The man who'd wept in his arms, who'd played Claire de Lune just for him at midnight, that wasn't a con. He confronted Ethan that evening, over a dinner gone cold. Vito came to see me. Photos. You and him, what the hell? Ethan? Ethan's fork clattered to the plate, color draining from his face. It wasn't like that. He forced the deal. Alex. Pictures for leverage. To keep me paying. I never lied again. Alexander's voice was a whisper, laced with venom. First your death. Now this. How many layers? Ethan? How deep does the deception go? Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. But he didn't flinch. I did what I had to survive. For us, for the dream of us. If I'd come back broken, you'd have pitied me. This way, I could be whole. The argument escalated. Words weaponized, accusations of abandonment, pleas for trust. Alexander stormed out into the snow, hailing a cab to his empty office, where he nursed a scotch and stared at the skyline, feeling the empire he'd built teeter. Betrayal wasn't just Vito's threat, it was the realization that their love, had always been a fragile construct, built on sands of secrets. Christmas lights twinkled mockingly from the lofts across the street as Alexander nursed his hangover the next morning, the city waking to a blanket of white that muffled its usual cacophony. His phone lay silent, no calls from Ethan, no groveling texts. Just a voicemail from Marcus, Vito's small-time boss. We lean on him. He folds. But your pianist. He's got a trail. Bounced from Philly to Nashville. Gigs under aliases. Clean now. But desperate once. Desperate. The word clawed at Alexander, conjuring images of Ethan alone in dingy motels, fingers bleeding on piano keys for a crowd too drunk to care. He wanted to hate him, to walk away and let the lawyers bury the mess. But the pull was visceral, a tether forged in dorm room whispers and beachside confessions. By noon, he was back at the loft, key turning in the lock like a confession. Ethan was packing. Suitcases yawned open on the bed. Sheet music folded neatly beside faded jeans and a leather jacket Alexander remembered from their college days. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed, but his jaw set in quiet defiance. "Go ahead," he said, voice steady. "Don't throw me out. I deserve it." Alexander crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping Ethan's shoulders, not to shake, but to hold. "I'm not throwing you out. But we can't keep doing this, half-truths and shadows. If we're gonna try, it's all of it. The ugly, the broke, the parts that scare us." Ethan searched his face, then sagged against him, forehead dropping to Alexander's chest. "I don't know how. I've been running so long, I forgot what standing still feels like." They unpacked together, hands brushing over relics, a dog-eared score of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the one they'd argued over during a blizzard-bound road trip, a silver cufflink Ethan had stolen from Alexander's dresser as a joke, now tarnished but treasured. That night, they talked, really talked, for the first time. Ethan unspooled his odyssey, the initial relief of death, the grind of busking in New Orleans subways, a near break in LA shattered by a producer's wandering hands. "I played straight clubs after that," he admitted, voice low. "Told myself it was survival, not surrender. But every note was for you." Alexander shared his own scars, the therapy sessions post-funeral, electroshock veiled as reparative treatment that left him numb, the parade of lovers who blurred into Ethan's ghost. "I became my father," he confessed, staring at his reflection in the window. Calculating. Built walls higher than his, thinking it'd keep the pain out. But it just locked me in. By dawn, exhausted but unburdened, they made love again, not with the frenzy of reunion, but the tenderness of survivors. Ethan atop, slow and deliberate, eyes locked as he whispered, "I see you, Alex. All of you." Alexander arched into him, hands mapping the curve of his spine, the world narrowing to the heat between them. The shared rhythm of breaths and heartbeats was amending, stitch by stitch, in the quiet sanctuary of their bed. Marcus handled Vito with efficiency, a midnight meet in a Red Hook warehouse, where accidental photos of the lone shark cozying up to a federal informant surfaced, courtesy of Alexander's connections. By New Year's, the debt vanished, paid anonymously, with a warning that echoed through Brooklyn's underbelly. Ethan performed at a gala for the Ali Forney Center, his fingers weaving magic for queer youth who'd found themselves on the streets, just as he once had. Alexander watched from the wings, pride swelling like a tide, and when Ethan dedicated the encore to "A Man Who Taught Me to Play the Heart's Hardest Keys," the applause felt like absolution. Spring unfurled in tentative blooms, their life a delicate balance. Alexander scaled back meetings, carving space for Ethan's world, masterclasses at Juilliard, where he'd finally enrolled under his real name, quiet evenings cooking pasta in the loft's chef's kitchen. Alexander's tie loosened, Ethan's apron dusted with flour. They fought. 2 petty spats over Alexander's late nights, Ethan's reluctance to meet his inner circle, but made up with a ferocity that left them boneless and blissful. Yet the past was a patient predator. During a weekend escape to Alexander's Hamptons estate, the same beach house where they'd first said, "I love you," under a meteor shower, a letter arrived. Not email, not text, a crisp envelope, postmarked from Philadelphia. bearing the Caldwell family crest. Ethan's hands shook as he slid it open. Alexander at his side on the sun-drenched deck. Waves crashing like indifferent spectators. It was from Ethan's sister, Lila, once a kid tagging along on family vacations, now a lawyer with a Ivy League polish. "We've known for years," she wrote. Script elegant but edged. "The insurance payout saved the house, but it ate our souls. Mom's gone 2 years back. Dad's a shell. Come home, Ethan. Or don't." "But no, we're done pretending." Ethan crumpled the paper, hurling it into the surf. But the damage lingered. "They profited from my grave," he spat, pacing the sand. "And now? Absolution because she's dead." Alexander pulled him close. Salt wind whipping their hair. "You don't owe them shit. But if you want to face it, with me, I'm there." Ethan nodded, burying his face in Alexander's neck. "With you. Always." The funeral was a study in contrasts. A staid Episcopal chapel in Rittenhouse Square, filled with mourners in black who eyed Ethan like a specter. His father, gaunt and gray, extended a hand that Ethan ignored, choosing instead to stand beside Alexander, their fingers laced defiantly under the pew. Whispers rippled, "Is that the pianist? The one who?" But Ethan held his head high, playing a requiem on the chapel's organ that brought the room to tears, notes soaring like released birds. Afterward, at the graveside, Lila approached, her heels sinking in the sod. "He knew. You know. About you too. That's why he pushed so hard for the death story, couldn't bear a son who." She trailed off, eyes flicking to their joined hands. "I'm sorry. For all of it." Ethan's voice was steel. "Sorry doesn't rewrite the will, Lila. Or the years I clawed back from nothing." She nodded, slipping him an envelope, keys to the family cabin in the Poconos. "For when you're ready. Or burn it." They drove back to the city in silence, the skyline welcoming them like an old friend. That night, in the loft, Ethan broke, sobs racking his frame as Alexander held him, murmuring nonsense about stars and second chances. "You're my family now," Alexander said, kissing the crown of his head. "We make our own." Their lovemaking was cathartic, a release of pent-up grief, Ethan pushing Alexander against the windows. The city a blurred witness below, bodies slick and urgent. "Mine," Ethan growled against his ear, hands pinning wrists, and Alexander yielded, lost in the storm of it, the way Ethan claimed him with a possessiveness born of loss. Climax crashed over them like waves on the shore, leaving them spent and sated, wrapped in sheets that smelled of home. Summer brought a rhythm to their chaos. Ethan's debut album, Resurrected Keys, topped classical charts, a blend of Chopin and original compositions laced with queer anthems disguised as sonatas. Alexander's firm sponsored the launch party at the Whitney, a glittering affair where they danced under Basquiat's, Alexander's hand firm on Ethan's waist, ignoring the raised eyebrows from old money dowagers. "Let them stare," Ethan murmured, nipping his earlobe. "We're the story they wish they had." But beneath the glamour, fissures widened. Alexander's father, Elias Hartley, the iron-fisted patriarch who'd softened only in senescence, demanded a sit-down. Over steaks at Del Frisco's, he fixed Alexander with watery eyes. "He's trouble. Son. I ran the checks." Aliases. You'll end up like your mother, heartbroken, bankrupt in spirit. Alexander's fork paused midair. Mother left because of you. Your rules. Your hate. Ethan's the best thing that's happened to me since her. Elias sighed, folding his napkin. Love's a luxury. Alex. Power's the real currency. Choose wisely. The words burrowed deep, resurfacing during a merger negotiation gone south. A rival firm leaking whispers of Alexander's distraction, stock dipping 2 points overnight. He lashed out at Ethan over it. Late one August night, rain lashing the windows like accusations. Is this what you wanted? To unravel everything I've built? Ethan recoiled as if slapped. I never asked for your empire. I asked for you, the boy who promised forever under the pier. The fight ended in silence. Ethan sleeping on the couch. Alexander alone in the vast bed, staring at the ceiling's shadows. Betrayal, he realized, wasn't just Ethan's secrets, it was his own fear. The poison of legacy seeping in. Autumn leaves turned the park gold as they mended, tentatively. A weekend in the Poconos cabin, dusty but defiant, where they hiked trails hand in hand. Ethan composing on a wheezy upright. Alexander grilling trout over open flame. This could be us, Ethan said one evening, as they watched fireflies dance. Simple. Real. Alexander kissed him, tasting pine and promise. It is us. Now. But the climax brewed in shadows. October brought a call from Lila. Dads will reading. Contested clauses. He left you nothing, she said, voice tight. But there's a codicil, something about a trust, tied to the accident. Come. Or lose it forever. Ethan hesitated, but Alexander urged him, go. Close the door. The reading was in a mahogany-paneled office, air thick with old money and older grudges. Violet, poised in pearls, slid the folder across. A life insurance policy, doubled after death, but clawed back now with interest. Dad bet on you staying gone, she explained. Lost the house anyway. This settles it, clean. Ethan's laugh was hollow. He bet wrong. As they left, a man in a fedora lingered by the curb, Vito's muscle. Eyes cold. Thought we were square. Caldwell. But interest compounds. Panic flickered in Ethan's eyes. But he masked it, hailing a cab. Back in the city, he confessed over takeout, Vito's back. Says the payoff was partial, some bullshit fee. Alexander's jaw clenched. I told you. I know. Ethan's hand trembled on his. But if I run again, you won't. Alexander pulled him close. Resolve hardening. We face it. Together. That night. Their passion was fierce. A bulwark against fear. Alexander taking Ethan against the kitchen counter. Slow thrusts building to a crescendo. Whispers of stay and fight mingling with moans. To his armor, forged in vulnerability, but the storm was closing in. November's chill seeped into the bones of the city. Frost etching patterns on skyscraper windows like cryptic warnings. Alexander moved like a man possessed. His days a blur of calls to Marcus and private investigators. Nights of vigil at Ethan's side. Vito's threats escalated, taunting texts to Ethan's burner phone. A slashed tire on the baby Grand's delivery van. A brick through the loft's window with a note, pay or play dead, for real. Ethan withdrew, his playing turning jagged. notes fracturing like ice underfoot. At a recital for the New York Philharmonic, his hands faltered mid-Rachmaninoff, the hall holding its breath as he improvised a raw, improvised lament that left the audience stunned into reverence. Backstage, he collapsed into Alexander's arms. "I can't lose this," he whispered. "Any of it. You won't." Alexander's voice was a vow, but doubt gnawed at the edges. Elias's words echoed, "Love's a luxury." And as shares dipped further amid rumors of personal instability, the board circled like vultures, demanding Alexander address the distractions. The confrontation came on a Tuesday, gray skies weeping over Central Park. Alexander met Vito in a derelict warehouse in the meatpacking district, the air thick with rust and regret. Flanked by Marcus and two suits, he faced the loan shark across the scarred table. Ethan's debt ledger splayed like a battlefield map. "You're done," Alexander said, sliding a briefcase across cash. Crisp stacks totaling triple the principal. "Take it. Walk away. Or my friends here make sure you swim with the fishes." Hudson style. Vito's laugh was oily, but his eyes darted to the shadows where Marcus loomed. "Generous? Hardly. But your boy's got sticky fingers. Forgot to mention the side hustle, gigs laundering cash for my crew in Queens." Alexander's blood iced. "Lies." Vito shrugged, tossing photos, Ethan in a dive bar, handing an envelope to a hooded figure, blurry shots of him counting bills backstage. "Believe what you want, but dig deeper, and you'll find the grave you dug was shallow." He left with the case, footsteps echoing into the gloom, and Alexander turned to Marcus. "Verify everything." The report landed in his inbox at midnight. A dagger to the gut, Ethan's trail. Post-death. Included stints fencing bootleg merch for low-level dealers. A brief foray into prescription flips to fund a demo recording. Not deep crime, no violence. No syndicates, but enough to taint the fairy tale. Desperation, Marcus noted. Not deceit. Alexander confronted him at dawn, the loft bathed in the pallor of false light. Bleary from a sleepless night, froze mid-pour of coffee. "It's true," he admitted, shoulders slumping. "Small shit, Alex. See? To keep the music alive. I stopped when I found you, swore it on every key. Why not tell me?" Alexander's voice cracked. The hurt raw. "After everything, you still hide. Because you'd look at me like this." Ethan's gesture encompassed the space between them, vast as an ocean. "Like I'm the ghost again." "Not your love." The argument raged. Words flaying open old wounds, Alexander accusing betrayal, Ethan pleading survival. "I was alone," he shouted, voice echoing off glass walls. "You had your towers, your name. I had nothing but the lie I lived." Alexander recoiled, the truth a slap. "And I had nothing without you. That's the betrayal, thinking I wouldn't fight for all of you. The broken parts too." Ethan reached for him, but Alexander stepped back, the chasm widening. "I need time," he said, grabbing his coat, "to see if I can trust the man I love. Or just the memory." He fled to the Hamptons, the estate a hollow echo of summers past. Days blurred into solitude, runs on the beach where they'd once raced the tide. Scotch by the fire pit where confessions had burned bright. Elias called, voice frail. Come home. Son. Let him go. Hartley's endure. But endurance felt like death. On the third night, storm winds howling, Alexander played Ethan's recordings on the old Victrola, the notes piercing like arrows. He saw it then, the depth of his love, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet ache of absence. Betrayal wasn't Ethan's alone, it was Alexander's pride. His fear of vulnerability in a world that devoured the weak. Meanwhile, in the city, Ethan unraveled. Gigs cancelled amid the scandal whispers. Lila's calls going unanswered. He poured his grief into the piano, composing a sweet, fractured octaves that friends smuggled to Alexander via courier. The liner notes, scrawled in Ethan's hand, play me back to you. If you can. The climax shattered on All Hallows' Eve. The city a riot of masks and mayhem. Alexander returned unannounced, key turning in the lock to find the loft dark, save for the piano's bench, where Ethan sat, head bowed over keys silent as stone. I sold it, Ethan said without looking up. The Steinway. To cover what Vito might come collecting. Figured you'd want out clean. Alexander's heart clenched. The hell I do. He crossed the room, dropping to his knees before the bench, hands cupping Ethan's face, bruised from lack of sleep, but alive with the fire Alexander had fallen for. I listened to your suite. Every note a confession. I get it now, the running, the hiding. It wasn't betrayal, it was fear. Mine too. Ethan's eyes searched his, tears spilling. You came back. Always. Alexander kissed him then, salt and sorrow on his lips, pulling him to the floor in a tangle of limbs and longing. Their reunion was wildfire, clothes shed in frantic pulls, bodies pressing with a urgency born of near loss. Ethan straddled him, hands pinning shoulders, rocking with a rhythm that built like a symphony's swell, slow builds to crashing peaks. Alexander's name a mantra on Ethan's lips. Forgive me, he gasped, as release neared, and Alexander arched up, whispering, only if you forgive yourself. They crested together, a duet of cries swallowed by the storm outside, collapsing in a heap of sweat and sighs. In the afterglow, Alexander traced the keys tattooed on Ethan's forearm, a drunken decision in Memphis, and vowed, no more secrets. We build from here. But the world conspired one final twist. Dawn brought news, Elias Hartley, felled by a stroke in his sleep. The board summoned Alexander to the bedside, where monitors beeped like accusatory metronomes. His father. Tubes snaking from arms. The firm. Yours. But promise me, no scandals. Him. Alexander squeezed the gnarled hand. Voice steady. I promise to live. Fully. With him. Elias's eyes flickered, regret, acceptance, before fluttering shut. He lingered 2 days. Long enough for a quiet visit, Ethan at the door. Cousin? Offering a sonata on his phone that played softly in the room. Elias listened, tears tracking into gray sideburns, then nodded once. Play well. Boy. It was absolution, fragile as frost. The funeral was a spectacle. Patrick's thronged with tycoons, eulogies lauding the Titan. Alexander spoke last, voice carrying over the nave. He taught me strength. But love taught me grace. Ethan stood at his side, hand in the small of his back. A silent anchor. Winter gripped the city anew, but their world warmed. Ethan's album went platinum, tours beckoning, but he negotiated dates around Alexander's schedule: Europe in spring, Asia after the holidays. They adopted a rescue mutt, a scruffy terrier named Chopin, who yipped at dawn and curled between them at night. Petty fights persisted, Alexander's workaholic lapses, Ethan's wanderlust, but ended in laughter, or lovemaking that reaffirmed their bond, tender explorations in the loft's rain shower, urgent trysts in hotel suites on layovers. One April evening, under sakura blossoms in D.C. for a recital, Ethan knelt amid petals, a simple band glinting in his palm, white gold, engraved with intertwined notes. Marry me, Alex. Not for show, not for society. For us, the music, the forever we almost lost. Alexander pulled him up, kissing him fierce amid gasps from passers-by. Just 1,000 times. The wedding was intimate, a rooftop in Brooklyn. String quartet playing Ethan's originals. Witnesses their chosen family, the tearful Marcus, gruffly proud. Vows exchanged as the sun dipped. Alexander's, you are my ghost, my grace, but my home. Ethan's, I rose from the dead for this, for you. Years wove their tapestry, threads of joy and quiet strife. Hartley's holdings thrived under Alexander's evolved hand, diversified into arts patronage, sponsoring queer youth programs that echoed Ethan's roots. He stepped back from the fray, content in advisory shadows, while Ethan's star ascended, sold-out halls from Sydney to Salzburg, compositions scoring indie films that won Oscars. They traveled as a unit. Chopin boarded with Lila, who softened into anti-hood, her law firm handling their wills with wry efficiency. Challenges came, as they do. A 2028 recession pinched the firm, forcing Alexander to lay off hundreds. Guilt gnawed at him nights. Ethan's arms his solace. We're not defined by dollars, Ethan murmured, fingers tracing Alexander's temple as they lay in a Milan hotel, post-concert glow fading. We're defined by this. His hand slipped lower, eliciting a gasp. Their lovemaking a ritual of reassurance, slow, sensual. Alexander yielding to Ethan's lead, bodies sinking like a perfect arpeggio. Health scares punctuated the bliss, Ethan's carpal tunnel flaring during a Berlin tour. Surgery sidelining him months, Alexander's bout with pneumonia after a Hudson River gala. Ethan at his bedside reciting sonnets between beeps. Through it all, their love deepened. Humanistic in its imperfections, therapy sessions unpacking buried traumas. Date nights at hole-in-the-wall Takarius where they people-watched and plotted adoptions, a second dog. Never kids, but mentorships for street youth. Betrayal's shadow lingered longest in memory. A cautionary ghost. In 2032, a tabloid dredged Vito's old dirt, grainy photos resurfacing via a hacker's leak, but they faced it head-on, a joint interview with the advocate, Ethan raw on survival's cost, Alexander fierce on forgiveness. Love isn't blind, he said. Hand over Ethan's on the studio couch. It's seen the scars and choosing them anyway. The backlash fizzled into support. Their story a beacon for couples navigating legacies of pain. The humanistic core bloomed in small acts, volunteering at the Ali Forney Center, where Ethan taught piano to runaways. Alexander facilitating job placements. One boy, Jamie, named for Ethan's lost cousin, found his way to Juilliard on their scholarship. His first recital dedicated to The Men Who Played Me Home. By 2035, gray threaded both their hair, lines mapping laughs and losses. They retreated to the Poconos cabin, renovated into a cozy haven, solar panels glinting on the roof, a grand piano dominating the great room. Winters there were sacred, no Wi-Fi, just wood smoke and whispers. One snowy eve, as flakes danced outside, Ethan pulled Alexander to the rug before the hearth, undressing him with reverent hands. "Still my melody," he breathed, lips trailing fire down Alexander's chest, drawing moans that echoed off log walls. They moved unhurried, Ethan entering him with a gentleness honed by decades, eyes locked in wordless communion. Release was a shared sigh, bodies entwining as the fire crackled, the world beyond forgotten. Old age crept gentle. Alexander retired fully at 65. His empire entrusted to ethical stewards, Ethan scaled back tours, composing memoirs in verse. Health waned, Alexander's heart murmur demanding stents, Ethan's arthritis muting keys, but they adapted, duets on electronic boards, walks with canes along the beach, reminiscing over photo albums thick with life. The end came swift. A double stroke in their sleep, 83 and unbowed. They slipped away together in the Hamptons' bed, hands clasped, breaths sinking one final time. No prolonged suffering, just peace, Ethan's head on Alexander's chest. The ocean's lullaby their swan song. The service was theirs, a cliffside gathering. Ashes scattered where they'd first loved. Lila spoke, voice steady. They taught us resurrection isn't magic, it's choice. Daily, defiantly, friends shared anecdotes, Chopin's antics, a botched proposal in Paris, laughter mingling with tears. Their legacy endured, endowments funding arts for marginalized youth, a foundation blending business acumen with creative soul. In Juilliard halls, students played Hartley Caldwell variations, notes weaving tales of loss reclaimed. And in quiet moments, lovers like them, finding each other across divides, whispered thanks to the stars, knowing that even in death, Alexander and Ethan played on, a nocturne eternal, humanistic hymn to love's unyielding grace.